Hello, everyone. In this video, I'm going to be going over the Myers-Briggs type indicator and the strong interest inventory. And so I'm not just going over the general constructs, but specifically, I'm going to be going over a sample report that I got from the Myers-Briggs company website for each of those assessments. So I'm going to be going through the assessment to kind of help you make sense of the results. So let me share my screen. I'm not going to be going over like all the concepts of the theories or of the assessment because those are covered in another video on the Holland theory as well as the Myers-Briggs type indicator theory as well. So to understand what the types and the interest areas are, you can reference that video. So this is very pragmatic to the assessments. All right. Whoops, I almost ended. There we go. So I'm going to start with the Myers-Briggs type indicator. So as you see here, this is from the MBTI company. And if we scroll down, this talks about the overarching information. I actually reached out to the MBTI company about their norm group. So it says that the information from on the MBTI is based on database of more than 1.3 million working adults. So it kind of basically matches you with the assessment results of 1.3 million working adults in the field. So it's kind of part of that matching process of those who are in the field doing well and enjoying themselves and they're kind of feeling that natural fit. It'll compare you with their results. But I wanted to learn more about the demographics of those 1.3 million. So that's why I reached out to the Myers-Briggs company. So if I get a response from them, I'll definitely follow up on what the norm group is. And also another important thing here is that the results from the assessments are linked to onetonline.org. So that's the career information resource where you can then, if you see a career on this profile that's interesting, you can go to it on onetonline.org to learn more career information about that field. So this starts with the overview of the MBTI personality types. So this is where I'm not going to go over the specifics of this because that was covered in the other video. But here you see that the result for this person was INTJ. So introversion, intuition, thinking, and judging. And here I think this is really, really important to make sense of. And with clients and, for you, looking over your own results, it'll be important to think about, okay, to what degree is my preference, to what degree is my preference? I guess I'll just end it with that. So we see here in this sample that the preference for introversion is very clear, or right on that cusp of clear and very clear. So it's this person, who is it again? Mike sample. So Mike has this pretty clear introversion preference. But that doesn't mean that they can't, engage in extroverted activities. They might work in an extroverted area, but then they go back to their office and they're working on their own things, or they go home and they don't want to be around large groups of people or around new groups of people, maybe just small circles of trust of friends, etc. So this kind of helps you make sense of, okay, so we always can work outside of our preference, but we need to kind of honor that preference at some point, or there's likely to be this personality drain. But then we see for sensing and intuition, the preference for intuition is clear, but close to moderate. And then with thinking and feeling, it's kind of in that moderate to clear range. But then for judging, there's only a slight preference for judging. So that means this person is pretty versatile, that they can probably be pretty flexible in how they're dealing with the outer world, as it says here, that they can be spontaneous, they can be kind of open to options, open to receiving more information. But if it comes down to it, they're going to have a slight preference for, okay, I need more of an organized approach. But this is where, like, if someone's like slight on all of these, that means they're going to not have just one clearly dominant preference, that they're going to be like this. The multi-potentiality of the person's going to be pretty high, that they can kind of adapt and be flexible. So once again, one thing to really think about, doesn't really just provide the answers to you here, but it shows you just visually where you are on that scale. So definitely suggest you take some time to consider that. What I really like about this is it kind of emphasizes strengths based on types. So this is focusing on or career choice. So preferred work tasks might for this individual based on the INTJ type might be to analyze complex problems, devising technical solutions to problems, etc. So there's these preferred work tasks, and then a preferred work environment. And then it gets to these action steps. So this can be important just to read through, but also if you're interpreting this with the client, to spend some time of helping them think through these and see which ones align and which ones don't. Like, to me, career assessment should never be used in a way to say, oh, here's who you are, and the assessment's going to help is going to tell you who you are. No, this is a tool to help you self-reflect and to decide. Yes, there's some outer information, and there's some things that might be open, like you might have blind spots, and this might be like kind of helping you expand and cover that blind spot. But I truly don't believe that these career assessments are ever knowing more about you than you know already, but they can be catalysts to self-reflection, and just kind of thinking about a bigger picture of who you might be based on these norm groups. So things to consider. All right. So once again, for career exploration, it breaks it down into there. So here's based on your type, how you might go about career exploration. These might be your strengths. That the person with the INTJ type might be pretty skilled and have that strength of like figuring out, okay, what are my long-term goals, and being able to make the plan to achieve those goals, etc. But then there's going to be some challenges. Like, for example, they might be impersonal during job interviews. They might kind of struggle with that interpersonal connection. So then they give some suggested strategies, like take time to establish a personal connection with the interviewers. So it's like maybe it's not going to be just come naturally to take that time with interviews. So it's something that, like, for someone in INTJ who does resonate with this, who is like, yeah, I might be impersonal. I might be just kind of focus more on like the content rather than the interpersonal process. So they might have to more consciously make choices and thoughtfulness to make those connections. The same goes for the remaining challenges and suggested strategies. Then action steps are there as well. Then the next page goes over the same information, but related to career development. So here's where your style has probably helped you develop strengths in defining a compelling long-term vision that's related to the career exploration process, thinking strategically and seeing the big picture. So it talks about, okay, here's where once again, your strengths, where they might lie, but here are the challenges, and that's some suggested strategies. So here is then where it starts to get into specific occupations based on types that might be a good fit. And this is where you have to really be thoughtful of like, okay, let's just jump there. So because the most attractive job families for INTJs is in the life, physical, and social sciences, I must do that. So sometimes people be like, oh, the assessment told me that I need to be a biologist because I saw it on the list of the most attractive jobs. No, not at all. It's just saying that of the 1.3 million people that this was normed after, many INTJs found this general area attractive. But it doesn't mean that you will be a perfect fit, or it must be the perfect fit for you. But it's probably a good idea of at least to look into it. So for example, if a student or a client hasn't looked into any of this general field, but their personality type is saying, yeah, you probably have a preference for this area. Maybe their initial thought is like, no, but looking into it could be helpful, just to say, okay, there's something about it that seems like it could be a good fit. Not saying that it will or that it must, but could be. So basically kind of having that tentative openness to exploration can be helpful if the client is willing and open to that. So yeah, then it just goes through this general, the charts based on the most attractive, moderately attractive, and then least attractive. So then this is where, okay, the most popular occupations. This is where most students and clients just want to jump right to this. Okay, what's my number one career? Physicist. Oh crap, I hate physics. What do I do? This is wrong. The assessment's dumb. It doesn't make sense. Like I've heard those reactions immediately, but it's like, okay, so maybe you don't want to be a physicist. That's totally fine. But there's something about physicists that might connect to who you are. So maybe physicists are people who think about big ideas and they like to think analytically. They like to really problem solve and think about the natural world, or like could be, and so maybe that's all true of you, but you don't want to apply your preferences specifically as a physicist. Maybe you want to apply in a very different way, but those same core, the core essence of what makes that attractive might apply to you, but the form of expression is different. So that's where, I have seen at the same time that some of the top occupations that students or clients haven't thought about, and they're like, wow, that's really cool. Like I haven't thought of that, but that sounds like great. So then they go to ODA online to look up the career information, or they go occupational interview, or they go talk to a professor who teaches in that field, and then they go and take classes, and then it's like they're off and running, and it's a good fit. So it can be anywhere on that spectrum of just kind of initial revulsion of the top careers there, or just a really natural fit, or anywhere in between. Uh, so then there's least occupations as well. So sometimes it can be just as important to know what's least connected to who I am, rather than just what's most connected. So those are a few thoughts on the MBTI assessment results. And once again, this is just for the career report. So I'm going to jump over now to the strong interest inventory and go through kind of some similar thoughts. So the strong interest inventory is actually based on gender, and a dichotomous gender, so male and female. So I did, like I said, reach out to the Myers-Briggs company, who also facilitates the strong interest inventory, to learn a bit more about their demographic groups, of how their norm groups for the strong interest inventory, because there's not much out there. It doesn't state that there's the 1.3 million population. My understanding was that was specifically just for the MBTI. So I'm waiting to hear more about the demographic population that this assessment's normed on, but gender is a central way that this assessment's made sense of, and specifically male female gender categories. I don't think they have anything of non-binary or other categories outside of dichotomous gender conceptualization. So I'll wait to hear back though. Maybe I'm making an assumption there, so I'll learn and definitely reach out with more information. Okay, without further ado, the strong interest inventory is like a funnel, a really big funnel. It talks about just overarching concepts and then goes down to the really specific career, similar to the MBTI. But so the first pages of information are going to be pretty general. But this is specific to Hannah sample. So Hannah, the highest interest area was social, then artistic, enterprising, etc. And once again, if these are new to you, make sure that you view the other videos to get updated on what these Holland codes are and the ideas behind them. This will share some information, but the other video will go in more depth of John Holland's theory, which is the foundation of the strong interest inventory. So social's the highest. So if you're looking at your results, then your numbers your letters are most likely going to be different. So R might be highest for you, etc. So it's going to change them based on your interest connection. So for Hannah, social was very high. So a 71 score was very high for Hannah, and that's comparing Hannah to other females in the field. And then artistic is also high at a 60, but then moderate for enterprising, and then the others are low. So John Holland would say that Hannah is differentiated, meaning that her Holland codes are clearly different. That it likely be a bit easier for Hannah to make a career decision because her interest areas aren't so just like enmeshed. Like if they're all low, that would be difficult. There might be other like mental health issues going on, of depression, of it can be a lot of different things, but sometimes it's the depression that's like, I don't have interest in anything. Or if they're all very high, or many were very, very high, then that would be really hard to make a career choice too, because there's so much, because the client would be undifferentiated. So just sometimes it can make sense to kind of make sense of these scales, because you'll likely get a highest theme, but if you don't know how high it is, then it's not as helpful. So then we're starting to narrow in with the funnel. So we know these, so the interest code or the theme code for Hannah is SAE, but now we start to figure it out. Okay, so in social specifically, which was very high, the counseling and helping was the very high score at a 69, and then teaching and education very high at 67. But then some areas in social were just moderate, like healthcare services. So we know that Hannah wants to help others through the social, code being high, but there is a kind of a specific way that Hannah wants to help. So through counseling and helping and teaching. So that's kind of growth. I want to help you achieve growth. I want to help you learn and that educational process, maybe even learn more about yourself through the counseling and helping. And then even the where there's little interest in the realistic, but athletics was at a moderate, so that's important to note as well. That even sometimes there can be some important information to glean from these lower interest categories because there can be subcategories that are connecting. All right, so once again, many students jump right to this. Students and clients jump right to this of like, okay, what's my top occupation? So speech pathologist. Oh, okay. So, then you can click on this and it would go to ONET Online once again as well, and you'd be able to learn more about speech language pathologists. And it also shows you occupations of dissimilar interest. So overall, though, doesn't mean that just because it's the number one that it will be a perfect fit. It's just saying that many speech pathologists have similar interests to you, but maybe you want to apply your interests in a very different way. And maybe it would be a good fit. It's part of that exploration process. Ultimately, the client or student needs to be making those decisions for themselves of what resonates for them and why. And it's just part of the exploration process of the inward exploration of, okay, how does this make sense to me? And then I need to do outward exploration, kind of to verify that the fit of what my interests are would really match well in that area. So yeah, here are the top 10 strong occupations. Then it goes in even more depth for the specific occupations under social that were connected. And you see here that it says, so scores for 40 and above means that your results were similar results to individuals in these fields, similar interest areas, and that's with women. So Hannah, being female, it says your interest with you share interest with women in the occupation and would probably enjoy the work. So it doesn't say you will, it just says you probably would based on the connections. Mid-range is 30 to 39, saying you'd probably enjoy some of the work, sharing some interests with women in the occupation, and then dissimilar is 29 below. It's like you probably wouldn't enjoy the work, but that's still probably and tentative. And then we go to artistic. Enterprising goes through all the different codes. Then this also gives like an MBTI type scale of like, okay, so my work style, do I prefer working alone with data, ideas, or things, or do I prefer working with people, enjoying helping others, being outgoing? It's a clear preference towards working with others, which isn't a surprise because of that social uh, interest area being highest. But then the learning environment, practical learning, hands-on, short term is over on this side of the continuum. Over here is more academic, learning through lectures, willing to spend a lot of years in school. So there's this kind of not fully clear, but a preference towards that style of learning, etc. For leadership style, risk taking, and team orientation. So sometimes it can be helpful to think about and just kind of process where am I at on this scale. And just because I have a preference somewhere doesn't mean I can't work in this other area. It just means it might be against my natural inclination or my natural preference. So this is just the overview of the previous information. So it can be kind of a wrap up of a lot of the information. But then I think this can be really helpful for college students or high school students in particular, is it talks about, okay, based on the social interest area, college majors that might be a good fit could be found here. Once again, doesn't say they will be, but it's like these are career or excuse me, college majors that tend to lean towards occupations in that social empathetic helper area. The same for artistic and enterprising. It just does the highest codes there. And sometimes people just have one highest code. If there's only one, like let's just say Hannah had very high score for social and then everything else was very little interest, it won't show the top three because the others were low. So just show social as being the highest. So just something to consider. Sometimes there's just two codes that are shown as, the primary codes to be emphasizing. And another helpful thing here is that then this goes to, okay, so the counseling and helping subcategory under social, these might be some organizations or activities to take a part in college. So doing peer counseling or peer advising, student, doing some volunteer work, internships, with a nonprofit, college majors or college courses that could be helpful, etc. So it goes into these subcategories and gives you even more information. Then lastly, here's the top 10 strong occupations once again, but then it gives majors or educational background that could lead to that, as well as college courses, and then even just related careers. So it gives even more. So 30 more careers. So there's the top 10, but then 3 for each gives 30 more ideas. Uh, yeah, then it once again goes over the preferred work styles and kind of gives you an idea of how to apply that preference. So there are a few ideas of what the strong interest inventory and the Myers-Briggs type indicator assessments are, but then a few thoughts on how to interpret them, how to think critically about them, and how to not kind of make leaps based on the results without reflection and exploration. So just a few thoughts to add there, and I'd be happy to chat or to respond to any comments on the video. Thanks.